I'm Tyler. I work for Knife River. I deal a lot with our GPS equipment, construction technology in general, and have kind of taken care of our thermal and IC. I don't have many slides on IC. I think there's quite a few of you that have been through a lot of our part of the IC spec is to put on a little presentation or training. And a few of you have been through that probably a few more times than you care to. This is somewhat new stuff. This is something we put together for our internal training that we sometimes do. So this is good information as far as the thermal is concerned. And then I'm going to go ahead and cover just a few of the things that I think would help a lot of you guys out with inspecting and kind of knowing where, trying to come up with a standard of where things should go and how things should look. But I'll kind of start with these couple thermal slides I have here. So thermal segregation, kind of like Ty showed in that material segregation photo, right? When the rock separates, it cools faster. So it not only could be material segregation, but also end up being thermal segregation as well. And there's a few different technologies you can use to diagnose that. You can use a handheld temperature sensor, like a temp gun, kind of checking for cold spots. You got the fancy FLIR camera. Those things are awesome if you have one. It's really cool, especially if a contractor is running thermal, to see the comparison between them. And then you have the on paver devices. In this picture here, you can see a MOBA system, and then the CAT camera. TopCon also has one, and I believe Vogely has one as well. We primarily here run these two, right? The MOBA or the CAT camera. Some different types of segregation. You have truck transfers, operational and mechanical. The most common, I would say, are truck transfers, and then the next most common and probably the harder one to diagnose is actually mechanical. Just kind of going over some of these pictures here. These top two are MOBA data. You can see how there's always a little bit of pixelation with the MOBA data. All these screenshots are coming from the Veda software used to analyze the IC and thermal data. But you can see we'll see some CAT data and how much it's quite a bit more dense and compact with information. But the difference is if you could go back to try to remember that old photo. I guess I can even go back. This camera here has a device that goes back and forth, oscillates, whereas this is like a FLIR camera where it's an actual camera, right? So that's why the data is a little bit different coming out of them. So here's a good sample, I would say, right? You don't have a whole lot of colors, pretty consistent. Whereas here you have quite a few more colors going on. This is probably a truck transfer. You got some cold bit coming out of the hopper. They're probably running low on mix, and then here you get your fresh truck and it's hot again. So this picture here, it's the bat looks quite nice, but you can actually see a slight streak right here. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but as you go back, it's right there. And then same on this side too, right there. And we'll kind of cover that in the mechanical, but this is, the mat was looking good physically, right? For the most part, minus that little strip. But in the thermal, that was coming out as not so good. So it was definitely something we wanted to fix. And then this is just a picture of some night paving. So first one, truck transfers, kind of just best practice, overlapping windrows, make sure your hopper level stays as consistent as possible. What type of trucks and trailers are you using? Belly dumps, live bottoms, end dumps all have different thermal ratings depending on the trailer. If you want to make sure keep that in mind, at least, as if you're having trouble, what's kind of causing that. And then is a remixer working on a pickup machine, or you have some way of remixing the asphalt, it can definitely help out. These are the cat thermal. You can see here a nice consistent, that's what you hope to see. And then over here, you can see that it's pretty good, but then as you get into a new, like right here, it would be a paver stop and then a new truck. And you can see when that happens, we're getting a little bit of thermal segregation there. Each one of these colors, by the way, is about 10 degrees on MOBA or CAT, because everything's kind of standardized in VEDA. But so you can see that you have here all within here probably 30 degrees of difference, right? Is that terrible? Not necessarily, but it's not great either, right? Compared to this, which is you only have 10 degrees of variability here compared to the 30 here. You'll see a turn lane here. Typically, these came from a MnDOT project, and they really only require the mainline scanned with the technology. So when you go past that with the approach paver paved that, and you can see the colder asphalt there. It could have been paved hours ahead of time, so definitely cools off. Here's some operational. Make sure you got your screed correctly set, feed rate, speed, auger height. Pickup machine has to be set correctly. So this is that streak in that photo, that real small shadow. This is it, right? This is what it looked like on the thermal. And you can see it's over here to a lesser degree. But what is actually happening there is we were paving on a reclaim, so an egg base surface, and that went just fine for us. And then as we went to the next lift, we started experiencing this and we're having a hard time. It took forever to figure out, but we finally figured out that the pickup machine, he thought he had it set right, but he actually had to raise it up just a little bit more. So he scraped a little less of that coarse cold aggregate, because that coarse cold aggregate was coming or getting fed into the hopper, and it was going right at the channel of the paver where it gets deposited out to the screed there. And that's why you saw those two little lines, right? So once we raised that pickup machine up a little bit, our problem went away and things started to improve. But here you can see that same issue, but also this is probably a truck transfer of some sort, because right here you can see there was a paver stop. He obviously had a nice consistent pool in the hopper as he got through that. Then he started running into some issues. Then some mechanical stuff, got to diagnose the problem. It could be maybe you got a screed heater that's you're paving a little colder and you got those screed heaters on and one of them's broke. Well, you're going to get some inconsistencies there. We already talked about the pickup machine, just stuff to think about. Do you have any spare equipment on site? Do you have any spare equipment in the yard, or do you have any available equipment at another company? Something we think about here with our scale. We have a sister company in St. Cloud that has a lot of this equipment too. Is it a possibility for us to get it if we need it, to roller goes down or something? Great. If not, well, I'll have to figure something out. So why is it important? It's important to the overall product and what we produce for our clients. Thermal does have an impact on our other quality metrics, such as density and ride. It's not a perfect one for one, but it can definitely play a variable in them. If we're suffering, I've had it where we're suffering on density and it could be a thermal thing, but not necessarily always. I've had it where we're suffering on ride in Minnesota, and thermal could have contributed to that as well, but not always. So it's hard to say exactly how much it impacts these other metrics exactly, but it definitely plays a factor in them for sure. And then there's plenty of incentive on the MnDOT projects. North Dakota does not offer incentive for it, but we'll cover some of that. It's still definitely a bid item that we're required to get that data and share it with you guys. This is just some references and That's it for my presentation. So with that, I want to share just some process things and things that you guys should look for access through the spec. One, we already kind of covered that IC training, right? If you want it, you should request it. I know Valley City District and a few of the guys at KLJ now have been through a lot of our shindigs, and it's a little bit redundant. Sorry, I don't really know how to make it any less, but like if you're new to the technology or new to that spec, it's in the spec it's required, so I would request it, right? So I'll just I will open up this, let's see, where is that document? Is it this one? Yeah. So I'll just try to zoom this in a little bit. So this is just something that I share with inspectors as we go. I saw a few of you have probably gotten an email from this. This is just something I'm trying to standardize here. So you insert the name. This is a link to get the Veda software to look at it yourself. And this using the MFT site, the public MFT site, to share that data. The only problem with this website is that once a file is uploaded, it's gone after, I think it's 3 months or 6 months. I'll have to, there's a note when we sign into it. I'll show you guys that. But it's a great way to share the data overall, and how I've done it the last few years that the North Dakota has been doing this spec. And then this is the path that I use for where I store it. So it's home, DOT, NDOT, materials, intelligent compaction, project number. And it's just nice because everyone has access to it, and someone just has to remember to go download it. If you want to see the real-time analysis, so we use a lot of Trimble and Cat products. They have a platform called WorksOS, and then I'll show you that as well. But I have a generic username set up for that, so that any inspector should be able to sign in and at least make sure that the data is flowing in. And when we have projects going on, that's typically, I was kind of telling Sharon yesterday, that's my typical workflow when we got that going on is I'll sign in, that morning and just make sure that the data is being collected, because that's at a minimum what we are required to do for North Dakota. So this is kind of the end of the email, and then I just, make sure you're inserting the IC work plan that is also required, and I can show you a sample of how we set those up. And then use the Minnesota's AMT 106 daily lot form. A lot of the KLJ people have probably sick of filling that out, but it does help out a lot to get that, to put the final Veda project together. So that's something usually I look for as well. So that's kind of my standardization of it. Seems to work. So, but it's not perfect. So we'll go to that MFT site here. I think I have it prepped to sign in. Hopefully everyone can see that. So yeah, it's three months or 90 days of the initial upload. But as you can see here, we just hit that home folder, find the materials, Intelligent Compaction, and here are the two projects that we actually did last summer. The data's already gone, right? It's been stripped out of here from when these folders were made. It's been over that 90 days, but looks like they're still remnants of them. But generally set up the project number like this, and then the PCN. And inside here, we'd have even from, oh, here we go. So I usually have a folder structure of 01, which we'd have our alignment there. And then 02 would be our manual data, or the raw data. So in here, I would have an 01 or an 02A and an 02B for IC and thermal data. And then you have an 03, which would be your daily lot form. And then your 04 would be your final Veda project. And 05 would be the final submission form. I use another MnDOT form for that, but that's not really important. It's just, I think it's just a nice thing to provide. So I do it, and we have the form to do it. So that's kind of how I structure that. And I would just encourage you to make sure that that contractor is sharing the data somehow. It doesn't have to be this way. There's nothing in the spec saying that it should be done this way. I just find it convenient, right? but make sure you're getting that data somehow from the contractor, especially before paying on that bid item. That's just something I've talked about. And there's some engineers that are maybe better. I remember we paved a job out in Williston, and yeah, I definitely was dropped the ball on getting the data processed and everything. And he did not pay until we got it, which was good. And I don't think anyone told him to do that, but he did it. So I was impressed. And that's how it should be. So something to talk about there. I will show you that Works OS, that real time, so you can kind of verify that. You know, I believe TopCon has something similar to this. I think it's called like SiteLink 3D if the contractor's doing that. But I'll just show you ours here. I got that signed in. You'd sign in and you'd be able to, if you have access to these projects, you'd see them here and you just go find one. So I'm just going to pick the I-29 job from last year that we did. Because from testing yesterday, we know that one works. Open this up. You'll want to go to the map icon here and open your metrics. And by default, you could look at pass count. Generally, that's where I would look to see if the data is flowing in as well. Right now, we're set to the whole project, so it's going to take a little while for it to pull in all this data. But if we zoom in now, we should see some data here on the interstate, which we do. So we're looking at the whole project, right? And we see our IC data, and you can see there's wherever there's the asphalt ended, concrete began, there's, you know, less compaction effort, obviously, because they're just kind of rolling past it. And we'll take a look at that. Also under a bridge, right? GPS isn't going to work, so you're always going to lose data. Even if this was asphalt under here, you would lose that data no matter what. But I'll just show you how to, in here, what you'd have to do is actually go up to this filter tab, and you could pick a date range, a specific date, which we can do here. So we can see that it's 6/21 to 7/26. We could pick a specific date we want to. So I'll use a custom. Let's just do 6/21. And we'll go then you can actually filter by, we shouldn't do that. It looks like I think we had some rain days that first day. Maybe I'll leave it at the full extents for right now. Just know that you can filter it by a specific day if you want to. And while the project's going on, there's really easy, you know, today or yesterday, right? Or current week. So while the project's going on, it's pretty easy. It's just tough to pick a specific day because it could rain one day, we could have breakdowns. So if I pick everything here, you can see you have your different rollers in here. You can see we had quite a few breakdowns. So we're bringing in multiple different rollers at different times, right? You can see a CB68B, CB16, CW34. So that's a rubber tire pneumatic roller. And the CB68s, CB16s are your steels. And here's our paver, the AP1055. So if we pick that and just filter by that, you'll see the pass count. Well, it's just going to be one pass, right? Because it's a paver. So we might not want to look at pass count for there. We could switch that to temperature, and you could actually get a rough idea of how consistent things are. It's not quite as detailed as that Veda, but at least you know data is being collected and stored, and you get a rough idea. And you could probably still pick out a couple longer paver stops if you cared. One cool thing is this, there's a DDV on this platform. I don't think all of them have this, but if you click that and click on the data, it'll actually show you the temperature at that spot. So kind of cool. And you can do that with the rollers as well. So if I put this back to pass count, And we filter this by not that, but by, we'll just grab all the rollers because I'm not sure which ones are where. Then I click that data viewer as well. Same thing. It's a graphical representation, you know, it's there, but you can actually see the temperature and the pass count, which was right here, what pass number they were on and what design they were on. Yeah, so that's just kind of a quick way to view the data. I would not put a ton of validity into the temperature on the rollers. The breakdown should be a little bit more accurate, but the rollers overlap a lot. So when they hang off the mat, right, they're actually depending on where that temp sensor is orientated, it could actually be picking up the a lane that's already paved or what have you, right? So just know that the paver temp should be pretty accurate, right? And probably what you care about more. The rollers, you do have to dig into it a little bit to make sure that it's accurate depending on how they're they're rolling at that time, right? You might grab them when they're on that overlapping a seam, and depending on which direction that is, those temp sensors are offset, so it could be reading off of an existing or old or a cold mat, right? So you do have to be a little bit careful with the rollers with the temp, but at least this would give you a tool to verify that information is coming in. And obviously not every contractor uses the same thing, but this is an option. If not, in the past, what I've done is in that email, the standard email here, I would say I would have another little space down here saying that if you need to see data, you need to request it and you can plug it into this free Veda software. So, but this is what I do. And then I have insert the IC work plan in that daily lot form. So we'll just cover those real quick. I'm sure a few of you have gotten these generic IC work plans because nothing really changes. It's using the same IC system and the same rollers. So I kind of just put all this information. It's a bunch of marketing material, but that gets you all the specifications for the rollers. Kind of just going through this. And you get some useful stuff about the generic IC systems down here. Get into the Trimble stuff, maybe. Matic rollers. Here we go. So here's just some basic IC stuff, kind of shows you the different components of the system. Here's those temp sensors, got your GNS antenna and your displays. Here's a little bit more involved one, different options. And then your Veda certification from MnDOT's really the only one that I know that does this, and you can search to make sure that the contractor is certified to do that, or the person doing the Veda analysis for the contractor. And what else do I got? Oh, this Veda 106 form. So this is that form I'm talking about that's nice to be filled out every day. Well, fill it out every day because it's based on the number or, each day's paving. And this is just so that, the inspector that's actually out there every day knows exactly what the contractor paved. So this is nice as a check to fill out. So for example, you could fill this out 0 to 05, 24 or 25 now, right? Route system, we'll just use truck highway. And then I did 29 for that sample. What are you paving? HMA, what lift? 1, center line offset. We'll just say it's center line 12, right? If it's a custom one, you can key that in. This is a divided highway. On our example here, this looks like the southbound I-29. So that's what we'll put in there. Southbound. We'll just say from 0, we pave to, I don't know, let's go to 100. And this would let you key an exception. So like a bridge exception, what you want to do is highlight, put your cursor in there, and I already have the exception keyed in. You can just check this. So you know it's 25 to 30 because a bridge isn't going to change from the stations, right? Once it's kind of established, it's a permanent, and you can just hit confirm. And now you have that exception put into the form. And if you say you go across the southbound, but you're going the 12 left this time the next day, all you'd have to do is the same thing, right? You could just say they paved to 125 that day, and you could do the same thing. Well, it's going to make me key in everything, but you kind of get the idea. Once you keyed in all this, that same exception is going to happen across that other segment of that lane. You can just key in that exception, and you can add as many as you need to. And I just add a note of what they are. You know, if it's a bridge or maybe it's an overpass, you can key all that in. So this form is just helpful for building that final Veda project. So that's, I think, everything I had regarding the thermal. The biggest thing is just, you know, make sure you're getting that data, because that's what the bid item is being, that's what you're paying for.
Is there anything that we could say here, I guess, as far as the alignment that's expected of us?
Yeah. So I guess I should have talked about that a little bit too, huh? The two things for this technology that the contractor is going to need, right, is we're going to need the alignment. So if that's not made, you'll have to kind of make one, and there could multiple ways you could do that, right? You can get the section lines in the road if it fits, and use those to create that alignment. Alternatively, you can just split the road, and what I've done this a few times where you once you split the road, if you're just using the GPS to do that, right? Because now you're creating that alignment. Or if you're just, even if you just split the road and take those offset stakes, shoot those and then offset into the center, whatever you're measuring, right? That works too. So a couple different ways to gather that information. You just want to make sure you have a rover out there when you're doing it. Or maybe you have an old construction alignment from a grading project or something that you can use. The state might have that as well. Kind of three different ways to do it. But what will always work, right, is splitting that road. And as long as you have a rover out there to either you split it and shoot the hub and then offset it in the CAD program later, or if you just want to, hey, I split it, this is the center, you just take a GPS shot on it, right? And then you can kind of build an alignment from there. That's the main thing that a contractor will need. And then the second is some control points, right? That's pretty common when you're using the GPS technology for anything else. So, and generally I look for on IC minimum of 5. If it's a real short job, you would need at least 5. And then if it's a long corridor, 1 every 2 miles or so is generally good enough on alternating sides of the road.